Good afternoon. I'm Carol Johnson, and I am the president of the Board of Trustees of the Wilton Library Association and the vice president of the Wilton Chamber of Commerce Board of Directors. Welcome, and thank you for being here this afternoon for our State of the Town with our first Selectman, Toni Boucher, and our Superintendent of Schools, Dr. Kevin Smith. I'd like to thank the library and Camille Cario of the Wilton Chamber of Commerce for putting this event together. And now we'll turn it over to Toni and Kevin.
Good afternoon, and we couldn't be more delighted to have such a great turnout for our first, which we hope will be annual, State of the Town presentation and meeting and get together, questions and answers. As I said, we are so happy to have you here, and also we should recognize some of our wonderful, dedicated board members that are here on the Board of Ed. I think we have Pam Eli, and we have Nicola Davies is there as well. And we have, let's see, from our Board of Selectmen, we have the wonderful and ever-present Ross Tartell. Ross, say hi to everyone. And our state senator, all the way up from Hartford, who's had probably a very long session, Cece, say hi to everyone. Cece Myers. Okay. And we should also recognize your town administrator, who works very hard, Matt Knickerbocker. Matt, say hi to everybody. And we are really fortunate to have some of the best leadership in both our fire department and our police department. And we have our police chief with us, Tom Conlon. Thank you so much for joining us, Tom. Well, I can't tell you what a year it has been. And you all know that as well, and you've heard it time and again in various presentations that we have had an unprecedented session of budget session this year. Probably for those of us that have been here decades and decades, probably the most difficult one that we've seen to date. So much had happened all at once. And just to give you kind of a semblance of where we have been and how far we've come in just a short few years, we all remember way back in 2008, we had an international market crash, and the real estate market in Wilton really collapsed. This is when almost everything kind of came to a halt, and a lot of repairs and upgrades were stopped. We started a recovery, but it was very, very slow, but our home values were historically low. I know mine was half of the value that it had originally been. The pandemic then showed up in 2021, and everything shut down. Most towns did. There were empty storefronts. People in cities, though, started to move to the suburbs. That changed things quite a bit. We had vaccines everywhere. We had remote teaching, which certainly affected school and learning. And it still is rippling through not only the educational system, but higher ed and graduate schools. They see a difference there. Property revaluation was supposed to happen in the year 2023 and 22, but it was postponed until 2023, just this fall. And as a result of that, the kind of results we got from it were so stark that people were scratching their heads. What has happened? Well, quite frankly, it was supply and demand. So many people were moving into our towns, and the inventory of homes shrunk so badly that there were $200,000 and $300,000 incentive bonuses on the day that a house went up for sale. In fact, we even heard last month from our assessor that one home got an additional $500,000 additional, incentive on that very day. And of course, when that happens, then our home values rise. And mine certainly caught up, and now it's double what it was at the lowest part. And commensurately, my property tax increase is in the top, 20% in the town. And I have no basis for appeal because I know darn well that it is valued a great deal more. You add to the fact that our homes are increasing in value and cost, we also have inflation. So, at the same time that this was going on, the powers that be understood that after years of holding back, they needed to address serious repairs and maintenance issues that have been not really done when they should have. So they employed a couple of consultants, one for the school buildings, which the town is responsible for the school buildings, and also for the town hall, the annex building, and other ancillary buildings. You know that the town also owns between 5 and 6 other properties in town as well. The Gilbert and Bennett School on the corner of 102 and Route 7 is also town property. Ambler Farm is town property. It was purchased in 1999 for $2.6 million. It has a very detailed lease that it specifies specifically that the town is responsible for maintaining those buildings. You know, the ones you pass by, the white house and also the yellow house, and then there's the white barn that you all see that has been at least made livable and usable, but it's also responsible for the red barn and so forth. The Friends of Ambler Farm put on the programming. Luckily, they got a wonderful gift this year, this is good news, from the highest taxpayer in the town, and that is ASML. They are also the largest employer that went from 2,000 employees, actually it started at 400, there were 2,000 last year, they're at 3,200 as of last month, and they pay $400 million in taxes. The very next closest is $100 million, and that's your electric company. But all the other businesses are anywhere from $17 million to $20 million. So think about that when you drive by ASML, and thank them every day for what they do for you and us as the taxpayer, for sure. So here we are. We have a revaluation going on. We have $130 million worth of repairs and maintenance that were documented through the consultants that did it. But luckily, that can be done over 10 to 15 years. Luckily, it's while our bonds and our debt service is being reduced as we're paying off school construction like Miller Driscoll and so forth, leaving us a large capacity to actually do this without raising anyone's taxes over 15 years. We can keep debt service level. Oh, and we're just joined by another one of our Board of Education members, Laurie Buffano. Laurie, thank you for joining us tonight after a long, hard day at work. And do recognize all of these board members that serve you, Board of Ed, Board of Finance, Board of Education, Board of Selectmen, Planning and Zoning, Wilton Wetlands, Conservation, there's so many. They do this in their quasi-free time, which they have little of, at the expense of their families, at the expense of their jobs, and we thank them so much for all of that. So here we are, we've got all these headwinds this year, this big infrastructure problem, and then Moody's. Now I have bad news and good news on Moody's. Moody's recognized that Wilton, as other towns were over many years, were using their excess fund balance. That's our reserve fund, our rainy day fund, to buy down a tax increase. So if in the last couple of years your taxes might have been 5%, they were able to bring it down to 2 or 3% by using that excess cash. And Moody's says, you're not to do that. Do not do that anymore. We'd like to see you do a policy that actually restricts the fact that you do that. And we've always looked kindly on Wilton, but you've got these problems, and if you don't fix it, we may have to downgrade you. The good news is we worked very hard. Our Dawn Norton, who's our CFO, along with the Board of Selectmen and with the Board of Finances, finally acquiescing to this because it does tie their hands. We passed a very fine fund balance policy that we brought before Moody's, which, by the way, the meeting with them happens once a year. It's a very intense call, an hour and 15 minutes long, asking probing questions like, who's your biggest employer in your tax base? What's your economic outlook? What's your financial practices? Did you pass a budget? And there's the good news. In face of all of this, the town of Wilton came together. We were holding our breath. I know Kevin and I certainly were, and Board of Finance, Matt Ramondi, who did a very fine job. The fact that we worked so closely together, which Moody's saw that, and they like that. We worked hard, and we were just holding our breath, and lo and behold, everything passed. And they not just passed the budget 2-to-1, all the others 3, 4, or 6-to-1, and guess what passed with the highest number of votes? The beer issue. It got the highest numbers of votes, and I was teasing Kevin because I said, Kevin, you know, those school roofs always get the most votes. No, Nope, the brewery got the most votes, even above that. So they're very excited. So you should know that the effort behind that was the owner of Orange Diner, who has a new beer that they've created called 12 Gods. So who knows? Maybe someday we'll see a storefront somewhere here in Wilton. So that was really good news. And that was so rewarding. It really nearly choked me up when I saw that. So rewarding to know that the hard work that was done this year, everyone pulling together, during unprecedented times, really we were rewarded by a very, very good outcome. So today, we've got some road repairs to do. We have town hall renovations to do. We have Middlebrook School HVAC and roofing to do. We have Scribner Hill Road renovation to do. That got some pushback a little bit, but if people drive on that, they'll know that that road is really kind of falling apart, and it's a hairpin turn, very dangerous, so that we need to do that. The wonderful news is that Moody's not only gave us a bond rating of AAA, our bond counsel said he's never seen an outcome that was so good that they literally tipped their hands. We couldn't say anything to the public or the paper. Sorry about that, Heather. But until they made it official, that they literally tipped their hands right after the call. They are saying, you know, you guys, you're doing a really good job. And by the way, ASML didn't hurt. They really loved hearing. Not only did we have such a strong employer, they said, well, didn't you have to give them some money back? You know, some incentive, like, you know, a tax decrease, or you know how the state always does, CC, they have to give someone, if they give you new jobs, you give them a tax break. Oh, well, good. That's good news. So the good news is we were able to tell them, no, there was no incentive given at all. They're growing organically, and much to their credit. So what else is good that is happening is that we have established a very strong relationship between all the town boards. We even get together once a month to have lunch together, which helps a great deal. And of course, Matt, who does a great job, Matt Knickerbocker, working together with all the boards as well. We're really pleased on how that's going. We also are getting new software upgrades, both in IT in general, which Matt is leading that charge, and that's going to help both the schools and the towns. We also have new software for our accounting and budget, which we have such an old system. It's not accurate, it's clunky, it's terrible, and we're going to get a new one, and it's being implemented right now as we speak. And we have a new IT manager that's going to make sure that we're in tip-top shape, which, by the way, that was a question at Moody's as well. What's your security like? And again, ASML is a gift that keeps giving. We're so incredibly grateful to them. They gave Ambler Farm $334,000, not for building upgrades, only for programs and for scholarships for inner city kids to come and enjoy what is so wonderful about our town. We are also doing very well, if anyone's questioning, with our police station. Our police station got off to a rocky start. It was very slow, but we got it moved ahead, put a lot more effort behind it and good expertise behind it. And you're going to see that possibly be completed in June of 2025. So that is good news. Also, we have our police, our fire, and our CERT departments that are some of the best in the state. In fact, the CERT program is considered the best CERT program in all of Connecticut. We're very proud of them. They're doing a lot of training that's taking some expense in staffing to do that. We do have, and you will see that in future budgets, and bonding, particularly on helping to fix what's broken at Ambler Farm, and number two, the space constraints we have at Town Hall. You all saw the pictures. There's no heat in a lot of our offices. The columns have been falling down. The infrastructure is in desperate need, and all of our conference rooms are now cut up into cubicles because we've run out of space. And we need that space with, as you've heard, all the construction that's happening in town. Anywhere from 900 to 1,000 more apartment units, which is going to bring a pressure upon not just police, fire, emergency services, but our school system as well. But it will also add to our restaurants and our facilities and assets to the community. It will also bring more customers to the Wilton Library and all of the other great organizations we have in town. So looking ahead, we're looking at that 15-year building program. We're looking at something really fun, and this is a public service announcement. the governor's office has reached out a couple of times. They're embarking on something called America 250 Anniversary Celebration. In July 4th, 2026 will be the 250th anniversary of the signing of the Declaration of Independence. We've assembled the names of every nonprofit in our community, every board, every organization, to ask them to have a point person, and each one try to arrange one wonderful activity that can be town-wide and enjoyed so that we can have great celebration running up. The representative from Wilton to the governor's office will be Stephen Pierce, who's our director of Parks and Rec and all things 4th of July. He's absolutely tickled to do it, and he said as a child, he even dreamed about one day doing something like this. Isn't this great? So yay for Steve. And by the way, there is the question I normally get, cell tower, cell service in Wilton. Verizon finally got approval from the Siting Council about a month ago. They've employed someone to start working on it. They're working on the base of that. We're hoping by the end of this year we'll get better cell service. And of course, you all know about the utility work on Route 106. That's ongoing. There have been some issues there, but we have strong relationships with their liaison to the company. And when there's problems within the neighborhood, getting school buses out, they're reacting to it right now as we speak. So I'm just going to include my comments and send this over to your superintendent to give a little overview about the schools. And then we're really here to, do question and answers and have a casual dialogue with everyone. Thank you so much for coming.
Well, good evening, everyone, and thanks for taking some time out of your busy schedules to come out. I'm absolutely going to spend a few minutes talking about the schools, and when Carol called a few months ago and said, hey, would you like to do a State of the Town update with Toni? I said yes, and then I hung up the phone and said, State of the Town, what's the state of the town? And so as Toni was talking, I was just looking around the room. I'm going to name drop some people here. So as a resident of Wilton also, I want to invite you all to join with me in some gratitude in living in a community where so many of our elected officials, appointed officials, volunteers can pick up their cell phones, dial up their Rolodex, and call them on a first name basis and have a conversation. So Matt and I have gone back how many years? Like 12, 15, 18? Toni and I have known each other for about the same. Looking around the room, Toni called out a number of our elected officials. I see Farah Masani is here, who chairs Wilton Pride. Lori Fields and Mike Candell are here, who work at Trackside. I see John from the EDC is here, who's got a daughter who's graduating in just a couple of weeks. So many others. Tom Conlon, who I pick up the phone and call probably once a week to say, hey, XYZ. So my point is, and there are many others, and so I apologize, Tammy or Vanessa, who are some other unsung community heroes in this room. For those of you who don't know, there's a large group, Jared at the Y, Christine from the Y, right? Our library folks are here. All of these folks come together every day, and they spend countless hours and lots of thought and lots of sweat equity for you and for your families and for all of our children. And for that, we should just take a minute and be grateful that we get to live and work in such a close-knit community. It's very rare, it's very special. And I'll say just, from my own perspective, and I know I'm speaking on behalf of some of the people who've been in public service for a while, especially in the last 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 years, public service has gotten really hard. Social media has not been a friend to your public servants. So maybe, thinking forward, we can do a little more of this face-to-face interaction. So anyway, on behalf of the schools, for all of our community partners that are in the room tonight, and for those that aren't here, let me just extend a very heartfelt thank you for all of your work, all of your effort, and for your sincere and dedicated partnership. It really does make a difference to the vitality of this community, and people who live in other places notice that, so thank you. So what about the schools? It's a state of the town. And there are a couple of points I want to just pick up on that Toni had seized on. One, we walked into this budget season, just given the revaluation, given all of the things Tony described, thinking that it was going to be a really, really hard season. And I will tell you, this is my 10th budget in this town. And except for the one that the town meeting that we had during the pandemic, because literally nobody came, this was the smoothest budget process that I've experienced in a decade. And I think that's because of the unparalleled openness and cooperation among all of the elected boards. You know, to me, that was the one key difference here. People were really, they understood the stakes, and everybody rolled up their sleeves, pitched in, and did a really, really good job coming together, vetting all of the budgets, looking at the questions, trying to develop long-range plans, and talking. And that made all the difference. And so we had, from my perspective, one of the smoothest budget seasons. And I think, again, that's another testament to this town and the people who live and work here. So the other thing, you know, Tony had kind of talked about was just, you know, Wilton being top in the state. And I think that's a beautiful segue to talking about our schools. I'm just going to run some facts for you. So pardon the list here, and I won't do them all unless you want to hear all the ones I have. So last year, Wilton Public Schools was the #1 school district in Connecticut based on the State Accountability Index. That's a series of measures that looks at academic growth and attainment, participation, access, and college readiness. This year, we were #3 on the State Accountability Index. Last year, niche.com ranked Wilton Public Schools #5 in the state. This year, niche.com ranked Wilton Public Schools #3 in the state. Annually, U.S. News & World Report ranks Wilton High School among the top 1% of all U.S. high schools. Last year, Wilton High School ranked #5 in the state on the reading portion of the SAT and #7 on the math, and had the 4th highest combined score. This year, Wilton High School ranked #1 on the reading portion, #2 on the math, and had the top overall highest average combined score. The high school was also top in the state on the 11th grade NGSS Science Accountability Test. Last year, 89% of our advanced placement test takers earned college credit. This year, 91% of our advanced placement test takers earned college credit. Last year, 63 students in that graduating class earned a seal of biliteracy, signifying that they're proficient in a second language. This year, 136 students earned a seal of biliteracy. Last year, 12 students were recognized as National Merit Finalists and another 13 as National Merit Commended Scholars. This year, 10 students were recognized as finalists. Finalists land in the top 1% of the PSAT test when they take it at their sophomore year. 76 students in the class of 2024, I'm sorry, I missed a word. You know, you kind of get in a rhythm and then you get out of it when you try to ad lib. 76.2% of students in the class of 2024 are or have taken college-level, college credit-bearing courses. Last year, Middlebrook was the highest performing middle school in the state of Connecticut. Grade 6 English and Math were the highest in the state. Grade 7th Math and English were #2. Grade 8 Math and English were #2. Grade 8 Science was #1 in the state. This year, Middlebrook was the 3rd highest performing middle school. Grade 6 was #3 in English and #1 in math. Grade 7 was #1 in the state in both English and math. Grade 8 was 4th in English, 3rd in math, and was #1 in science. I've got more. For the 2nd year in a row, our middle school was also #1 in the most growth, so how much students learned year over year on this particular assessment. Beyond the classroom, our schools and students performed just as highly. Our girls' ski team won the state championship for 3 years in a row. This year, they were the state runner-up. Our boys' ski team was runner-up last year, but won the state championship this year. Our boys' lacrosse team was the FCAC champion in 2023, and then they won the state championship the year prior. Our football team was the Class MM runner-up, and this year our girls' cross-country team was the Class L runner-up. The boys' tennis team was a state champion 1 year ago. Our gymnastics team was the FCAC runner-up, and in 2023, the boys' swimming team was also a state champion runner-up. This year, our baseball team was the FCAC runner-up. In the music and the arts, Wilton has been named a NAM Foundation for Best Communities in Music for the last 4 consecutive years. Last spring, the high school won the Best Contemporary Musical in Connecticut, and the theater program was nominated for 22 additional awards. This year, high school students took first place in the National PTA Reflections Contest in Film, Photography, and Visual Arts. High school students earned first place a year ago in the National Teen Safe Driving Contest and second place this year. The high school also earned the Best Call to Action Award and the Diversity Award. Our high school was the Connecticut High School Debate State Champions this year. In 2023, in the Scholastic Art and Writing Awards, 3 students earned Best in State, another 8 won gold, and 6 won silver. Annually, our graduating seniors earn admission to the most selective colleges and universities in America. Last year, graduates went to places like Harvard, Yale, UCal, Berkeley, Georgetown, USMA, West Point, just to name a few. This year, just to name a few more, students are going to BC, Dartmouth, Cornell, Claremont McKenna, Emory, Georgetown, Johns Hopkins, NYU, Princeton, Stanford, UChicago, USMA, West Point, and UPenn, just to name a few. So, oh, don't forget, yes. So we had one young man who lives under my roof at the moment went to Villanova, and there's another young lady going off to a little school that I love dearly up on the Hudson River called Marist with about 4 or 5 others. So I'll give you one other point of comparison, just because this is about the state of the schools, and I think you get the picture. On most measures, we come out at the top of our district reference group. And so those are the other towns and school districts that we're compared to. In our case, it's Ridgefield, Weston, Westport, Darien, New Canaan. And so, as you've heard, we landed at the top. But there's an important measure where we're actually close to the bottom, okay? And that's per pupil spending. I'll say that one more time. So there's one other measure that we're close to the bottom. That's per pupil spending. The only other district in our reference group that has a lower per pupil cost is Ridgefield. And I'm not standing here suggesting that, it's cheap to live in Wilton. It's not. But if you're sitting there thinking, wow, that's pretty good, the point I want to make to you also is that we're getting the bang for our buck here, okay? And comparatively, we're getting a very good bang for our buck. So that's the state of the schools. We are achieving at the highest levels ever. Our focus continues to be on continuous improvement. We have staff in our classrooms and populating our administrative ranks who are singularly committed to ensuring that your children, our children, get the very best education they can today and all through their time here at the Wilton Public Schools. And I'd be very happy to talk much more about that in detail. Thank you.
Okay, it's now up to you to just raise your hand and somebody will bring a mic and you can ask us anything you would like.
Hi, so I'm Candace Cole. I live at, 14 Old Belden in Wilton. I'm extremely upset about all these apartment buildings going in. We talked about how amazing Wilton is, and I don't think it'll stay the same when you add 1,100 apartments. We can't, if you add 200, have you guys been dealing with the traffic lately? Add more people to that. We don't have the traffic flow. We don't have the means for this. Great, intended, if we want to keep our property value high, then we definitely need to keep, our town a town and not turn it into a mini city. I don't understand how the town or whoever is voting on this, how we don't, as a town, have a say. And I can talk about this everyone hates me because they're like, don't bring up the apartments with her. I'm like, I can't, it's enough.
Well, I am very happy you spoke up because I've been getting emails and phone calls as well. And from the, raise your hand if you agree with the comments that were just made so we have a sense.
May I make a comment on that?
Yeah, just a second, we will call on you as well, but I just want to get a sort of a sense, and it's also important for our elected officials that are here to get a sense of the community. Okay, that looks like about 15 hands or so, maybe 15 to 20 hands. That is so important. Just so you know, okay, the town Board of Selectmen does not make a decision on any development application or pre-application that comes before the town. That is the purview and the decision-making solely of the Planning and Zoning Commission. The Planning and Zoning Commission in Wilton, unlike other towns, is elected, just like any of the others. They're elected. And this year, apparently, there was no opposition to any elected office. They do serve 2 4-year terms maximum. One is getting off in 2 years. There's others getting off in 4 years. And it's so important that they hear from you. They are only on Zoom, unfortunately. And from what I understand, you can only comment on an application that's before them at the time that it's being decided on. And they're often continued from one meeting to the next, leaving people very frustrated if they're coming online to voice an opinion. I have encouraged them to have public comment generally, but it's up to their leadership to decide how they run their meetings. Where the Town of Board of Selectmen comes into this decision-making process is something called the WPCA, Water Pollution Control Authority. I never in my wildest dreams ever thought I'd have to become an expert on raw sewage. So I've learned a lot, and it's a very interesting area, quite frankly. So for those of us, the majority of us, we're on septic systems in our home with a well. But those that are along Route 7, certainly all of the businesses and downtown Wilton, they are on a sewer system, which is piped into Norwalk because we do not have a sewage treatment plant in our town. So we have to contract with them. We have a contract that now comes up in 2030. And during that course of that contract, if we reach a capacity of over 90%, we are to notify them. And certainly we are at almost 98%, which means that any development project approved by the Board of Planning and Zoning has to come before us, which there are 6 members, 5 of which are your Board of Selectmen, and 1 other person who was on the Board of Selectmen is currently on your Board of Education, and that's Lori Bufano. So any message you send me and them, I send to them. Any message you send to me about building and construction, I send to Planning and Zoning. You can directly send any email or letter to Planning and Zoning, and michael.rin@wiltonct.org has to provide those letters to every member of Planning and Zoning. They are of the mind, and I've been here 40 years, and even before an income tax. And during that time, and I was on the Board of Selectmen at a time when we had a woman by the name of Marilyn Gould, and she was also the Historical Society Executive Director, and she was a zealot about protecting colonial homes and restoration, started the plaquing, that you see the plaques on different homes when they were built. And she was a zealot about preserving the colonial character of the community. That times have changed a great deal. Different people have come on to these various boards with different points of view. And there was what's called a town plan of development. And that town plan of development was taken place, which kind of does a blueprint, so to speak, of where the town wants to go. And some of which has been about what kind of development would you like to see. A lot of it has been townhouses, different kinds of congregate housing, condos that are owned by people. Right now, the only thing that's being proposed and coming into town en masse are large-scale, dense apartment buildings, because I've been told it's more profitable for them. And to entice them to do that, and also in a way to counter the 8-30G affordable housing mandate from the state, Planning and Zoning went about changing an ordinance so that they could have between 4 to 5-story buildings instead of the 3 that's been typically in Wilton. That was passed by Planning and Zoning. That was not something the Board of Selectmen weighed in on or had a decision-making to it. So a lot of those developments are now turning into those kinds of applications. So there's 2 different points of view. There's a point of view that we need all of this so we can, have filled restaurants, and there are those that support it greatly, and there are a lot of others that do not feel that this is what they want. And it doesn't necessarily mean people that have lived here 40 years. There are people that have come to me that just moved in here a year ago, or even 2 years ago, and they're kind of surprised by it. And off the record, I personally criticized the builder of 141 personally when I talked to him about the appearance of it, that it was not necessarily very attractive. 141 was the old Melissa and Doug building that is almost ready for occupancy. There will be 208 units there, possibly 350 cars. It is a very constricted and traffic area. The police department is our traffic control commission for the community and can also be copied in on any concerns you have about traffic. I'm sure we'll be seeing more of this as these apartment complexes get occupied. So we are in a position right now to hold off on many of these that have been approved for a while until we find out if we can get more water capacity from Norwalk. We're in negotiations with them. They haven't yet approved anything, but they're thinking about it. We would have to pay them for it. If we pay them for it, that means whoever's using it will be assessed a fee. So the town isn't going to be, having to bear the cost of it, but the individuals and businesses on that additional capacity will have to bear the cost of it. We're not sure how much they will give us. We will see. But so far, right now, 141 was approved and done, and 131 has been approved. And they have the water capacity, but anyone else is sort of a bit on hold until we, are able to get there. Just so you know, this is a long-winded answer, but this is a very important area. The Pollution Water Control Authority can set priorities, and we have. The number one priority for us to give them more water capacity is if you're already a business growing in Wilton. ASML is a business growing in Wilton, right? And others. If you're new or you are converting, say Melissa and Doug, to a big apartment complex, you're new to the picture. And anyone after that is, the number one priority is transit-oriented development, which is 15 Old Danbury Road across from Trackside. That's the old Common Fund building. Number two priority is downtown Wilton. That's the Kimco, Starbucks building and complex there. Number three is, this would be number four, actually now. We're at number four, which is on Route 7. And we just did, really delineate that it was certain parts of Route 7 would get first priority, as was deemed by the town plan of development. And anything further south, whereas all this building is going on, is the last priority. So that's where we are with that issue. So someone else want to make a further comment about that?
That I need a speaker, but I'll use it anyway. Peter Slavin, 64 Old Highway. Hi, Tony.
Hi.
Hi, Kevin. Just to give the opposing view of the current subject, I happened to do a tour of 141 Danbury Road over the weekend. It's absolutely a magnificent building, okay? The amenities, the conference rooms, et cetera, et cetera. But if we're happy with ASML about a $400 million tax, I think we have an obligation to provide housing, whether it be apartments, condos, single-family, affordable homes to them in our town. And if we look at some of our neighboring towns, not cities, neighboring towns, New Canaan, Darien, Ridgefield, they all have nightlife. They all have activities. They all have, I believe, thriving businesses. How many restaurants in town and other businesses have closed since COVID? So I think we're going in the right direction. I agree we don't want to go too fast. I agree that we should slow it down, but I think we need to look at the big picture, look at what our successful neighboring towns are doing, and the people on the planning and zoning are very experienced. They're architects, they're professionals, and maybe it's self-serving in some way, I don't know, but there's room for everything.
Thank you, Peter. Right over there, there's a hand that's been up for a long while.
Thank you. Hi, Sarah Zawoyski, 26 Sunset Hill Road. No, okay, I can use my teacher voice too. But
Your name again?
Sarah Zawoyski, 26 Sunset Hill Road. I don't mean to turn the discussion because I'm against the apartments. I don't think our schools are ready for that. But I just want to make two points, one statement. Ban the cell phones. I'm an educator of over 17 years. Ban the phones, parents. We survived, they'll survive. Please, it's killing our kids. It has to go away. Superintendent Smith, thank you for sharing all of our accomplishments. It's why we left New York during COVID for Wilton. And there are so many, and I may have missed it, so I apologize, but I didn't hear many STEM or robotics, right? I feel like that's something that's lacking here.
Great.
And as a parent of a more STEM robotic child that's really not inclined to lacrosse or singing, I'd like to know if there is any relationship now building with ASML to get tracks in for engineering or anything, just for our STEM inclined kids.
Yeah, great question. This is a terrific question. So we've had a committee that's been engaged in a STEM review for just over a year. Frank Kompar, who works with me, is one of my colleagues who has been leading that work. This current year, we added another STEM coding robotics class to the middle school curriculum. This summer, our staff will be writing a robotics class for the high school, and what we're trying to do is create a pathway. In that committee, we've had representatives from ASML participate all along. Brian Amaro, who is the ASML Community Affairs liaison, who many of you probably know, as soon as he started here in town, he called the schools right away and looked to offer, whatever kind of partnership he could. And so we've talked across a variety of concepts to bring them in. One of the things that they're doing right now at Cider Mill is this junior ASML project where working through Mad Science, which is a third-party science vendor, they're bringing their ASML staff into our classrooms and teaching really hands-on engaging NGSS-assigned lessons. So go ahead. Yeah, they've also supported, we've done some women in STEM things at the high school that they've supported. Yeah, so there's, it's I would say all of the work in STEM has really been moving along. We just shored up our computer science pathway, and so now we're really turning attention to robotics. ASML also is interested in providing philanthropic support once we get there. They support the Norwalk's robotics clubs in a variety of ways, and have offered to support ours, which one of them runs out of the library, another runs, I think, out of Trackside. We have a couple, that run at the school. So, there's quite a bit happening. And just to come back to cell phones for a second. So there was a lot of applause in the room, and I really appreciate that. Parents, so this is a conversation, and, adults, so one of the things that we did this year that I had the honor and the privilege of participating in was run a mental health task force. And so we invited practitioners from all across the region. So we had some pretty heavy hitters. The president from Silver Hill, the gentleman who runs the social work program up at WestCon, and a couple of really notable practitioners who serve a lot of kids and families here in town. And we got together several times over the course of the year. And we had been in the schools really concerned over the last couple of years, particularly coming out of COVID, although we know that some of the precipitating issues preceded COVID, with the acute mental health crises that so many of our kids were experiencing. So just a couple of years ago, there were 6 suicide attempts of students at our high school. And so really, really jarring to watch that. And then when you dig into that and start to look at the kinds of experiences kids are having at younger and younger ages, it really raised an alarm. So we really started to look at that. We invited these practitioners in, and we engaged in some pretty heavy-duty conversations about what's happening with our kids. And as you can all imagine, right, it's multi-factor, right? So, these, issues aren't necessarily being created by school. In some cases, they might be exacerbated by conditions at school, but they're not starting there. There's lots of different reasons, kids are unwell. And so we're trying to get our arms around that. In the last conversation we had with these folks, one of our really brilliant local practitioners, put on the table for all of us, this question about relationships with cell phones. And there's plenty of emerging literature. The Jonathan Haidt book, many of you probably read, is, kind of hot off the press. So there is an active debate among scholars now about, all right, so what is the role of social media? What is the role of cell phones in contributing to students' lack of well-being? And again, I'll just say, it goes beyond that. But practitioners keep coming back to what is happening behaviorally with children. and look at how they're spending the time. And I thought the question that was asked that was so brilliant was, you know, to what extent do you consider and think about your relationship with your cell phone? And you know, for all of you here in the room, adults, I'll ask you the same question because I've been thinking about it myself. Right? I got my first cell phone, I think, in thank you Gary Chesley in Bethel in like 2008. And you know, if you kind of go back and trace the advent of social media, Facebook was 05, 06. Twitter was right about the same era. I think Instagram was 2010. There are a million new ones today. But if I got my first one in 2010, I can remember standing on the sidewalk, you know, one fall day at Bethel Middle School, admiring and marveling at all these kids talking to each other and playing, like they were literally playing violins and, you know, waiting for the buses. And then like the next year, it all went away. Like they were all on their phones and pointing at their phones and, you know, and this was more than a decade ago. And that behavior has only, you know, intensified since. And so we know that young teenage ladies are more at risk based on what they're exposed to on social media. And so, you know, the question today is, what are we going to do about it? And, you know, it's fun and easy and cheap for, you know, folks, parents. I'll use myself as an example. I've got four kids in our school, one who just graduated. I'm always blaming the schools for my kids' problems. Like, someone should talk to that superintendent. My wife is like, who do I need to write a letter to? But that's cheap, right? So I'm going to use this forum to say to all of you, let's consider collectively our relationship to our cell phones. You know, I can tell you, 5 p.m. on Friday, I know the emails I'm going to get, right? Because people are, you know, teed off about something. And so we need to think about that as adults who are tasked and morally obligated to role model for our children, right? And we don't, right? We just assume that they're fine, we're fine, everything's fine. And the data that we're seeing, you know, coming across our kids, we do all these different kinds of screeners and we check in with kids in a variety of different ways. Our kids are not okay, and we don't see everything. And so we all have an obligation to think about our relationships with our devices and how we're role modeling that for our most impressionable young ones. I can tell you, you know, the applause in this room, if we asked for applause the other night when we were talking about this at the Board of Ed meeting, there would have been applause. This is easy to go and celebrate it. When you have your child at the high school or the middle school or Cider Mill, and you've given your child a smartwatch, and it's 12:30, and you know something happened, and you want to get in touch with your kid, right? Then it's going to become a problem, and like that's the gut check moment for all of us. Like what are we willing to tolerate, and are there other avenues that we can tap into to safely communicate with our kids? And can we be comfortable that, yep, the kids are in school, and you might not have immediate access to your child, because that's what's going to happen. And then, you know, I would say just the last thing while I'm up here on my very high horse at the moment, one of the greatest challenges parents have is this perception of social pressure, right? And this is not new, right? How many times, parents in the room, have you heard, well, everyone's got one, everyone's doing it. I'm the only one that doesn't. And it's that social factor, right, that contributes to parents just caving. And I say that like with love and respect and understanding. I caved too soon myself as a dad. So you're like, every mistake that could be made, I'm sitting here telling you I did. And I probably will in the next 2 years, 3 years, 10 years, whatever the case may be. But we also have to find those groups where we know people are trying to hold the line and join those groups and create different networks, not on Facebook, where we can come together and provide each other support for making the hard decisions when we know that's going to make our kids really mad at us and they're going to feel different and left out and awkward and the like. So that's my soapbox on cell phones. Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. Oh, okay. Oh, okay, thank you. So, your name? I don't have, I'm Barbara Duvial, 283 Westport Road, and I don't have children. And I've lived in Wilton for a long time. And I love Wilton. I'm happy to support all of this. Great. Obviously, we're still here. So at school, children can have cell phones, and while they're in history class, they can be on their cell phone?
So the way
Like
it
all
works,
happens concurrently?
it's a great question. In the lower schools, so Middlebrook, Cider Mill, so you know, cell phones are still relatively newish at Cider Mill. You know, the age where kids are getting them continues to get younger. The expectation is that they're off in a way. At the high school, a couple of years ago, we implemented a classroom policy and really gave teachers control of that policy. Students would be required to drop, we hang these shoe caddies right by the door, and your kids would be required to drop their phones in the shoe caddy.
Okay.
But that becomes another problem for the teacher. And this is one of the issues we face today is, teachers have, we could talk for hours about, the kinds of things that teachers have to confront in 2024. But we didn't want to make this another problem for teachers.
Why would it be a problem for the teacher if you have to drop your phone at the bottom?
Well, because not every kid does it. Some kids are defiant. Some kids will hide their phones. Not.
Oh, how do you get to
Right, it
do
happens.
that? I went to Boston Latin School. We couldn't do anything like that. It would have been like, I don't know what would have happened to
Were
you.
those nuns or priests?
No, mine were, it was a public school in Boston. No, but kids
Yeah.
were defiant and they would say to the teacher, no?
I would
How's that
say,
possible?
and life is different today. I wish all of our kids were dutiful and compliant and obedient. And I'll just talk about the Smith kids. Sometimes the Smith kids have a bad day and they want to challenge their teacher. Part of that is being a teenager. Part of that is something else. But the world is different today. And so we have a lot of sympathy for teachers and all of the expectations that they have. They also now have to manage one. So we want to remove that obligation. And, again, if you've had the experience of having a child, a teenager in particular, you know that they are really crafty, right? And even when you think they're doing exactly what they are, and I'll, again, just refer to the angelic perfect Smiths, right? Every once in a while, right, they want something and they find a way, and kids do. And so that makes enforcing some of these policies where they're present really hard. So one of the strategies that's gaining a lot of popularity right now across the country is the use of these things called yonder bags. And, don't we wish we all had that patent? And so essentially these are these magnetic bags, you drop it in and they get sealed. Kids can carry their phones, but they can't access them. And then they can, hit a magnet on their way out of school and unseal it. And so that solves the problem of having to burden the teacher with managing kids' cell phone uses. So, that's probably too much information, but I guess the point I want to make is, it's easy to applaud and celebrate until it's your kid losing his or her mind because they don't like the outcome, right? And that's when it's really important for all of us to try to band together here. Yeah, that's right, and that's another really good point. I think that the comment was, if they don't have their cell phones, they also have laptops, and so that so this is some of the paradox in which we find ourselves, right? We celebrate the advent of technology because for many of our kids and many of our teachers in schools, it's opened up new worlds. Right? We can go, we can explore, we can be virtually in China in the click of a button. We can see and be exposed to all kinds of really good things. In terms of efficiency and productivity, the uses are self-evident, right? And so along with that, you get everything else. So particularly, at the high school where kids bring their own devices, every app they have on their phone, most of them can get on their devices as well and on their computers. And so that becomes, just think about this, you're a classroom teacher. Jeff, you've in these classrooms, you see this all the time. You've got, 18, 19 kids, you have them doing assignment, they've all got their laptops open, they're all, intended to be engaged in a good constructive exercise. And when you walk around to the back of the room and see what's happening on screens, right, there's a, old World Cup video playing, you've got your chat stream going, you're ordering your next Starbucks. I'm not making this right. These kids are wicked smart.
It's true.
So managing that becomes a challenge. And then I think the other obligation that we have alongside of simply removing or preventing access during the school day is we have to teach kids appropriate use. And this was a concept that we doubled down on years ago. And, it's simply insufficient. We've taught kids for years about their digital footprint, right? Does everybody know about your digital? Do you know about this, adults? Our digital footprint? What you say and do online is logged, and somebody somewhere's got it, right? That's the reality we've been in for a long time now. And kids developmentally, not all of them have come to understand that thoroughly. And some of our young people are learning those lessons the hard way. And that's sad and tragic. And again, as a community, we need to recognize that, yeah, you know what, those are serious mistakes you might make, and you're young and you're developing, and you need to learn from this and be forgiven.
So here's an exercise. You can all go home, get on your computer, type in Google fastpeoplesearch.com, and then put your name in it. And you will see the last 15 addresses, phone numbers, and so forth that is online for you.
Hello. Far be it from me to pivot the conversation away from social media and the dynamics of young people. But firstly, my name is Alan Davis. I live at 3 Salem Road here in Wilton. I noticed that there is a Wilton Chamber of Commerce brochure on all of the chairs when we walked in. I wanted to ask a question more about business and about commercial real estate, because we all experience the fact that residential real estate disproportionately increased in valuation with the recent revaluation. Why was that? This is kind of a rhetorical question, but I would like to, well, firstly, I'd like to say this is a wonderful forum and thank you for doing this. I think you should do it more regularly. I think you should include representation from some of the other boards in town, because I would like to put a lot of questions to the chair of the Planning and Zoning Board, for example. I would specifically like to ask them what their plans are and what they think we can do to focus on the health of commercial real estate in Wilton, about the businesses downtown, restaurants, bars, but also office space. If there is land that a developer wants to develop here in Wilton, why do they just want to build an apartment building? Why doesn't somebody want to build an office complex? How do we encourage that? How do we make it so that the next time we do a revaluation, that there is a disproportionate increase in commercial real estate valuations than there is residential?
Well, that is a question that even came up in our Moody's rating call, was that in the previous rating call, only a year before, they were very concerned about Wilton's economic health because so many commercial space were vacant. So my answer to him is what has happened is that commercial space is being transformed into a couple of different things. One of them is healthcare. Hartford Healthcare, Stanford Healthcare, Norwalk Healthcare, New Vance Healthcare. It seems that every other one is a healthcare or assisted living, nursing home, there's an expansion, and commercial buildings like Melissa and Doug, Tracy Locke, Kimco, and others, Common Fund, are being transferred into apartment complexes, not condominiums, which was what I hear from people want that, but apartment buildings, because they are more profitable and oftentimes a part of a very large investment opportunity and sales. That they're, even if they're not 100% occupied, there's an income stream that can be then translated into dividends, that can be translated into, you know, Wall Street conglomerate companies and investment programs, which I'm a little bit familiar with that. And it seems to be just like Common Fund, which is an investment firm. I worked there for 22 years, full disclosure. Myself, I retired about two years ago. And Toll Brothers is wanting to buy them as long as they can put around 200 apartments there, which would be the entry into Wilton. It's right on the train tracks. And you would say, well, why don't they do, you know, some condominiums that people can, you know, very nice ones, I might add, or even put some affordable units and so forth. But apparently, the interesting part of that is more profitable to the developer. It's less profitable to have condominiums. Some of them actually put their applications on hold until Planning and Zoning could pass that new overlay ordinance that they put in, new zoning regulations that allowed for more stories, which added more apartments, which added more income and more profit to their investment there. So it's an investment opportunity for them. As I said, there's different views in this audience about that. You know, I have my own personal views. I don't make them public. I can only do what I legally am required to do under the Wilton Water Pollution Control Authority. We're restricted simply because of lack of capacity. And the willingness for the city of Norwalk to give us more capacity. When they give us more, then they get less, but they have plenty of capacity. But there's other circumstances there too. So that is what may slow the process down a bit. It won't be all together. But again, this is a town meeting form of government. Wilton is unique and wonderful in that way. That means at every budget season, once a year at the annual town meeting, every voter votes everything up and down. Like as far as, well, planning and zoning is supposed to have a public hearing when they have these. Right. The only recourse you have is to run people that have a different priorities to that planning and zoning board. Well, you certainly, well, no, not just one voice. You know, you can certainly provide a petition on a particular project and make sure that that gets put into the record, and it has to be put into the record at their public hearing for that particular project. And it's supposed to have a public hearing at every single one of these approval processes that they go through. And if you get enough people on that list and provide it to them, and make sure that you write to our local papers about your point of view, and you are there to provide that information, whether it's online, through emails, through petitions, and so forth, and it's the bully pulpit, it's public opinion. And there are others that have a different set of opinions, but this is how you express how you feel. You either can do that through that process or run for those particular offices yourself. And they come open all the time. It's just not every 4 years or every 2 years, but it's also when someone goes off. And we've had many openings on our boards when someone moves or has a change in position or job, and they become vacant. And we're always looking for people that will step up and take on that role. It is a very arduous job because they have long hours, many applications that can be very technical in nature. And they also have to go before the inland wetlands committees, too. They also have to give an approval on that. So they have to get water capacity, get approval from the WPCA, they have to get approval from inland wetlands, and then again, planning and zoning is the ultimate arbiter of all of those.
Can I-
Okay, we have time for 2 more questions.
Do you mind if I just to follow to Alan's question, are folks in the room aware, there's a document you can find on the town website called the Plan of Conservation Development. So a lot of folks, some folks in this room, many elected and other volunteer officials several years ago participated in creating this document. And it's the blueprint for development for the town of Wilton for the next several years. And it lays out the rationale, the benefits and drawbacks, all of the various needs and concerns that are trying to be balanced as the town confronts, ever-increasing taxes with the need to grow commercial development. It's a really well-done document, and I suspect it'll answer a lot of questions for folks.
Well, it will, except that what I have noticed in that plan, there are many sections to it. This part of it, development and high-density development, apartment and living, is just one portion of it, but it seems to be all the focus right now. There's a whole bunch of it that talks about historic preservation, conservation, different parts of the quality and the lifestyle in the community. I don't think it has gotten much attention yet, but the good news is they are convening a committee to revisit that now because it's a 10-year plan and we're 5 years into it, so they're going to revisit it. I wish they would include more of the general public in that process, but when they do, I think that's a good time also to come forward and discuss that. And you touched on something, Kevin, that has always been a curiosity for me. Many moons ago, 30 years ago, I was on the Board of Selectmen as a very young person, just coming off the Board of Education. And Bob Russell was then the first selectman. And he commissioned a report, and I've saved a lot of paper. I've got tons of paper, and I got rid of all of it except this one report from back in those days, and it was called the Ad Hoc Committee to Study the Benefits of Development. Does it increase revenue or increase expenses in your community? It's a fascinating report. It is older. There's a newer one now from the University of Indiana, and I provided that report to a few people, and it's very interesting, and it says like a town like Weston with 0 development actually is less expensive to run than a town or a city. You notice our cities, how expensive they are, right, to live in. The more development you get, you have to balance that with the revenues coming in against the cost to a community. the school classrooms you need, the police and fire that you need. I already have heard from our fire department that they're getting a lot more calls, especially to apartments and nursing homes and those other kinds of living conditions, not commercial properties necessarily. So, and then there's another school of thought that concentrates just on all the additional revenues it's going to bring in. So I'd be cautious to equate more development with increased revenues because there's a cost involved as well. There has to be a balance.
Okay, I think we have time for one more question. Up to you guys to choose.
Woman with the-
There's two hands up. Maybe we can
Over in
do
the
them
far corner there.
both of them?
If you can do them both.
Yeah, you think then we'll try to
Yeah,
be quicker.
Lindsay McKay, 87 Old Kings Highway. I'm curious when parents are going to find out about the new reading curriculum and the plan for the fall.
The committee just met today, and we'll probably roll it out through the PTA meetings, just as we share information.
And then there was the one last question over there.
Thank you. Diane Russ. I'm on 74 Glen Hill Road. I just wanted to say, first of all, thank you very much for doing this. And I think it's fairly clear, maybe not, that most people want this more than once a year, if possible. So I've been here 40 years. As a retired psychologist who worked with executives on how to have conversations, this has been a very interesting dialogue, so to speak. I have one, maybe it's a small concern. It is related to apartments going up in town. It's related to a lot of things, and that's speeding. Two times last week, I had to help, look, I'm not young, but I am fit, and I had to help two people older than me cross the street in Wilton Center at a crosswalk because they couldn't get across the street because people were on their phones while they were driving. Talk about our kids. We're setting the example. So speeding is an issue. I walk the Norwalk River Valley Trail 3 times a week. Every single time, 100% of the time that I cross that street, someone runs the red light. People do not drive 25 miles an hour in town. They drive 45 miles an hour. It's a problem. And when we have more people and hopefully more commerce, I fear that it's going to get much worse. And it's a speedway. I'm afraid to ride my bike in town. I'm afraid to walk in town. It's a problem.
Can I just add, when you go up Route 7, it goes from the 4 lanes to the 2, very dangerous. I've almost been hit twice in like the last 2 weeks because people are on their phones and they're backing. It's very dangerous on Route 7 driving with speeding and left-hand turns because the left-hand guy is slowing down and the guy behind is not slowing down. Very dangerous. Speeding.
Well, I think that our police chief and other members of the police force are here who are very much focused on speeding issues where they occur, and they're listening to you. And this is, as you said, a great forum. You should know that the reason that I asked Kevin if he'd be willing to do this is because the town of Westport that I represented for 10 years in the Senate before CC came on board, they always have a state of the town meeting once a year with their superintendent, first selectman. I said, well, Wilton should have it too. And other towns that I've been in will have and convene a similar meeting, but with their town board members as well, including their top department heads. And it is an interesting one because they can answer a lot of other questions. I'd love to have one with planning and zoning for sure. If they're out there and hearing this, it would be great. I encourage them all the time to get more citizen input because things change in 10 years or 5 years periods, and they need to be hearing from the public. The good news is that we have an economic development committee. It's a subcommittee of the Board of Selectmen, and they're going to be sending out a survey to our commercial organizations in town to see what they need, what they feel, what they want. The Board of Finance did a survey twice now that has been incredibly well received, and the Economic Development Committee also did a sign survey from all of the commercial entities, which is fantastic. It has to go to the Planning and Zoning Board, and we're encouraging them to listen to what people are saying because the feedback we're getting is outstanding, and the talent in this community is incredible. I met a gentleman that was only here 4 months, and he was originally, this is so interesting, a doctor He's a doctor. And when his father finally died, because he always wanted him to be a doctor, he became an airline pilot, which is what he always wanted to do. It was fascinating to me. And he gave so much great feedback. And we have so much talent in this community. All we have to do is gather a group like this, and we learn so much.
Always.
And I took notes, by the way. I did, and we've recorded this so other board members could listen in. I hope they do. But I hope we survey people more often, too, about how they feel. I will not speak for Kevin. You can say, I cannot thank you enough for showing up. This year has been wonderful.
I'll just add, thank you very much, and we would definitely have more if people would come.
Oh yeah,
spent
they're here.
plenty of time speaking to empty rooms. So
No. You guys showed up more than we thought. Thank you. Thank you all so much. Stop in for coffee. I've got a coffee bar at Town Hall.